name is Grace, and you're listening to the Homebody Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Whether it's in astrology sessions or coaching work, group mentorship calls, or even in person, intimate relationships and partnerships come up a lot in my client work, which makes sense because I really center the erotic as a core value and transformation point, whether or not that's what we're specifically working on. And when I speak of the erotic, I don't necessarily just mean sexual expression, though I do include that. But even when technically people are in front of me to work on something else, like their relationship to money or their work, or they just want to receive energy work, partnerships are one of the first storylines that tend to surface, either consciously or even energetically. And of course, that makes sense, right? This is an area of life that we have a lot of desire, pain, and time wrapped into. And if you live with your spouse or your partner, all of those mundane details of your life also become intertwined. And since we're in a magical part of the internet where things are connected, I would like to propose that what's going on in your relationship or your dating life is a magnifying glass and a mirror for how you interact with life at large. Meaning, even though we're talking about, if someone's in front of me, even though we're talking about the relationship or sexuality or eroticism or whatever, the trials and tribulations and victories within this intimacy and within partnership are 100% connected to bigger patterns for how you meet life in general. For instance, I was working with someone a few months ago, and technically we were working on healing some work and relationship to money. But of course, within 20 minutes, also it's intertwined with a dynamic with her husband. And then also as we heal the dynamic around money and work and clients, etc., the dynamic also starts to resolve with the husband, and now they start feeding each other in a really new and different way. So it is 100% what we're experiencing in intimate partnership is showing us a bigger pattern for how we're meeting life and desire in general. And so I notice very often that if we can refine and heal what's going on in this arena, if we can open up another chapter within the partnership area of life, then other parts of life start operating differently as well, and vice versa, right? For instance, with this particular client, healing or cleaning up is really what a lot of it was. Relationship to money started also informing and healing and opening up a new chapter in partnership because things are connected. And often spiritual people tend to get really fatalistic about things that mean a lot to them or a lot to us, especially love and relationships, money, if there are things we really want, if it's something that we have pain around, lots of shoulds. There are all of these sneaky ways that we try to defer responsibility for our experience and shift the blame onto others, which of course is one of the biggest teachings of relationships, right? So I want to start from the beginning and from the get-go here. None of my points are going to be about how your partner is a shit show and you need to dump them and get with someone else. You are a part of sometimes that does need to be the case, but most often it's not. You are a part of what's happening in your life. You're obviously not in control of it 100%, but how you are being is a huge part of how you are experiencing your relationship. The other person and the experiences that happen between you are not happening to you. And a lot of relationship advice out there is a lot about behavior control and like affirmations. And in my experience, you can't think or affirmation your way to actual transformation. especially in relationship. All of the holes and the gaps in that will get revealed really quickly. You can't just control your behavior enough and hope for a different outcome. People can tell when you're forcing behavior control, and it's not what most people want from you. So, in today's episode, I'm going to share some of the most common patterns and noticings that I see come up around partnership and relationships in my work. This is not all inclusive, but they are the things that I can generalize the easiest for a podcast. Obviously, there are many different kinds of relating and relationship and a lot of different needs and desires that we have around that. And there are a lot of subtle mechanics, specific wounds, and things that are unique to each person. And that's what more personalized containers are for, like one-on-one work or group coaching or learning, if you want to go deeper into your unique situation. But that being said, there are a lot of common threads, and at this point, I've seen them enough to where I can make some generalizations and give you all some things that you can work with in your life. If you're listening in real time and you want to go deeper, later this month, next week in real time, inside of my membership, which is called Ma, I'm teaching a 5-week immersion that's all about really creating and living into more devotional partnership in your life. So you can join the waitlist for Ma, which is in the link in the show notes if you're interested or you want to learn more. The doors to join open on September 8th. And if you're listening to this in the future, you'll still want to join the waitlist if you're interested in that, because it will live inside of the membership. So anytime you join, you'll be able to get access to the past version of the course. Of course, when you join live, you will get access to all of the live mentorship calls. You'll be able to submit your questions and get more into sort of the uniqueness of what's going on with your situations, how the things I'm teaching about could apply to you and help you, as well as ceremony calls to help activate a deeper relationship with the truths that are foundational to this work. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the Ma waitlist, and the link to that is below in the show notes. So number one of the things that I see really commonly is there is this alternative ghost person in the relationship, this perfect person in your mind that you are comparing yourself to, your partner to, and your relationship to. Perhaps it's this ghost perfect person to whom all things get compared is based on like fantasy book characters or movies or childhood dreams or some imaginary other person who's always on time, always knows the perfect thing to say in every situation. This imaginary person you compare your partner to can read your mind effortlessly and gives you exactly what you want and need as soon as they can read your mind. They always want to have sex when you do. They're never needy. They don't ask for anything that you don't want to give. And magically, you don't have to tell them anything about what you want or need in life. They just know, and then they give it to you. Amazing. So, of course, with this perfect alternative person who is weirdly the standard that you compare your partner to, and sometimes yourself to, based on this standard, your partner is always failing. And when they fail at being this imaginary person, you likely punish them by withdrawing, by being upset, or adding it to your backpack of grudges, hurts, and resentments. And it can work the other way as well. And this is usually more obvious in the dating stage, because when we're dating, we're still in the other person is perfect stage. And then when we've been with them for a while, we realize that's not true. But we still keep comparing them to the perfect thing that we thought they were. But often in dating, we get stuck in, well, the other person is this perfect imaginary fantasy person, and they're so perfect for me, and they're all the things I ever wanted. And if something isn't working out, or if I'm not getting what I want or I need, then I'm the one who isn't perfect. And so now you're comparing yourself to this imaginary perfect ghost person. And if you can just become this imaginary perfect person, you will have the fantasy perfect relationship. Obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast, this correlates to a lot of the nice girl, good girl dynamics. So if you haven't listened to this, podcast yet or in a while, I highly recommend that you go back and re-listen to the RIP Good Girl episode, and we'll link that in the show notes below if you're interested. And when this is happening in dating dynamics, then dating becomes this like self-perfection project. And because we think that will get us what we want, which is based on an imaginary fantasy situation. And while it's great to work on personal development, obviously I think so because I literally work in the space of spiritual and personal development and healing. This fantasy goal of when I'm perfect, then I'll be loved exactly the way that I want is just a fantasy. It's a subtle story that can play out in a lot of different ways, but a lot of people are operating with some unconscious belief or unconscious story that is, when I'm perfect, when my partner is perfect based on this ghost person, then I'll be loved and I'll have this perfect relationship. I'll never be upset. I'll never get hurt. We'll have this perfect love. And it is just a fantasy. And it's a standard that a lot of people are holding themselves and their partners to. And this is a standard that we're operating by, we're holding our partner to this standard, we're holding ourselves to this standard. When they don't act in the way that we think they should, we punish them. And it works both ways. When we're not perfect, we punish ourselves, or we think we're so deserving of our hurt feelings or whatever it is. And it goes with this lie that we have to be perfect to be loved. We have to be perfect to be in love for it to work. We need our partner to be more perfect to deserve our love. We need to be more perfect to deserve the love we want, when in fact that has nothing to do with it. And love is not something that you deserve or earn, and perfection has nothing to do with love. These are not related. And this lie, which combined with this fantasy, often goes with a trigger response. For instance, when you don't get your needs met or your feelings get hurt, then someone needs to get blamed. Someone wasn't being perfect or good enough, and we must fix it. We must let them know. And when you can't, or that doesn't also get you what you want, then it creates this cycle of frustration and resentment. Obviously, this isn't great for intimacy and actual connection. You cannot foster intimacy and connection if you're sitting in judgment and grading papers. But it masks itself in sneaky ways. For instance, overly positive fantasy. Well, I can see their potential. They could heal. They could become this. This happens a lot in dating. Yeah, they absolutely could. Or it can go the other way. I feel like we're so perfect together if fill in the blank. And often we're so sure that our partner is doing this to us as well. They might be. But usually it's not in the way that we think. We're usually very sure that our partner wants us to be a perfect person. And that's why they're hurting our feelings. But almost always, that unworthiness is self-sourced. You are self-resourcing your own unworthiness by judging yourself for not being perfect. Because haven't you noticed the irony, the precise way that the thing you're so sure that you need to be perfect to be loved is the one thing that you're most ashamed about? And so where do you think that's coming from? Most of the time, it's not coming from your partner. That unworthiness is coming from within. They might be reflecting it back to you, but it's usually self-sourced. And so in order to go anywhere more subtle or deeper or refined, we have to first break this fantasy and this lie. You do not have to be perfect to be loved. Those are not connected. You do not have to have a perfect partner to be deeply in love. They don't exist. You can have your fantasy. A lot of people get stuck in the shoulds. Well, it shouldn't be this way, and they should be this way. That's fine. But you can have your shoulds, what they should and shouldn't be. You can have your fantasy standard about what the world should or shouldn't be. A lot of people doing this shouldn't be that way. Well, it is. So you can have your shoulds and your fantasy, or you can have existence. You can have life. This is life. Right now, this is what's here. You can have your fantasies and your shoulds, or you can have life as it is. You can have your fantasies and your shoulds, or you can have your relationship that's alive. And if we insist on clinging to our fantasies and our potentials and our shoulds, it usually comes on board with a lot of demanding change. It comes out of it's like feeling forced, it's nagging, it brings a lot of controlling vibes. Like if we can just get a good enough grip on ourselves or the other person, then it will be the thing it should be. And the irony is that is one of the few energies absolutely guaranteed to shut down meaningful transformation. The only way that anything changes, the baseline has to be total, radical acceptance of what is, period. And it's quite simple to logically understand, but it can be difficult to work into the psyche because it is a spiritual truth and reality. It's not a logical affirmation and argument. It is a field of transformation that you have to experience in order to get. You have to see and meet things as they are if you want to experience transformation. People as they actually are, not through your pain or your projection, not through your resentment, not through your perfect fantasies. You have to see and meet life as it is, your partner as they are. Baseline, that is the work of love. And it is deep work, and it's sometimes difficult work, but it is incredibly rewarding and powerful, and it is specifically and uniquely difficult and rewarding together in the container of devoted partnership. And the good news is, once you get the hang of this, of how things change, you become a master at change, rather than feeling like the victim being put upon by fate and other people and shoulds and all of that. And this is what makes you an actual person who can show up to an actual relationship with actual love, rather than someone just wishing and whining that things would magically be different without you having to do, say, or become anything. That's not the container. And I want to say one thing here, again, about falling short of these invisible idealistic standards that inevitably make their way into our dynamics with partnership. It's talking about like punishment. If we have a standard around perfection or being super good, and people fail at it, whether it's us or other, well, then we must punish them and take their power away so they don't do it again. This is very ingrained in our culture. It's reinforced through institutional religion. It's how many of us were raised, right? We learned a lot of relationship dynamics around forced obedience and good behavior as the epitome of being respectful or loving. But the whole, well, they're misbehaving, therefore I must punish them and take their power away to avoid a disaster because I can't trust them, that's a really big story that doesn't contribute to wholeness, yours or your partner's, whoever's getting held to that standard, and it's usually both. And so when we hold one another to this standard, the punishment standard, it reinforces it for both parties, whether you're doing it to yourself or whether you're doing it to your partner, you're doing it to both. When you judge others, you judge yourself, and vice versa. These are self-perpetuating, coexisting narratives. You cannot have one without the other. They feed one another. We talked about this a little bit in the judgment, moving from judgment to mystery episode. When you relinquish judgment of the other, you also relinquish the judgment of self. And have you noticed that being judgy pants doesn't actually change anyone or change anything? And when you relinquish judgment, you too get to take the noose off of your neck. What a relief. Another point I would like to make, and it frequently comes up around relationships, especially intimate relationships or committed partnerships, which is why I'm specifically using the language of devoted partnership or devotional partnership, because I think commitment in and of itself isn't a reward or a celebration. For, time in and of itself isn't an accomplishment. Like, you've been together 27 years. Wow. Like, that could be wow. Or it could just be like people who've been doing the same dumb shit for 27 years and they're just, more bitter, more resentful, and they've just been sticking it out, just giving it time. And we have this way that we relate to, like, if you just make it for a lot of time, then it's a reward. It's not. And we also have a lie about time, where time heals all things. That is also not true. Time doesn't make everything better. Time does not heal everything. Time getting spent isn't in and of itself a reward. Time does guarantee change, but it does not equal healing. And that's why it's important to me to differentiate between devotion and commitment. You can be committed to things that suck and endure for a long, long time. But I don't know that there's a brownie at the end of that race for anybody. It's how you be in the time that determines what the reward is and if there is one. For instance, I don't know much about winemaking, but I know that time spent can add value to it. If you store wine for 27 years, is that in and of itself the only secret to a fine wine, or is there more to it than just the time, than just the age? Of course, there's more to it than just the time and just the age. And I would like to add to that, when we center devotion in our exchange, not just with our relationship, but with life, and they are mirrors of one another, with devotion, anything and any moment and any chapter of your relationship can become a sacred site. Period. Point number 3, which is our hyper-independence and focus solely on self-love. In the West, especially in America, our independence is a huge fetish. And anytime we can't do it by ourselves, for ourselves, and we dare to need and desire someone else, we are failing. I shouldn't need someone else. I hear that a lot. If I just love myself more, then I won't care if I'm with someone else or not. That's not true. And also, self-love can only go so far until it must be expressed and poured out as love for other in order to be fulfilled. And when we insist that we are fully capable of meeting all of our desires, wants, and needs on our own, which is not true, but if we insist on that, it is merely a defense mechanism. It's a way of protecting ourselves and making ourselves invulnerable. Because when we need something that someone else has, or we want something that only we can have with someone else, that is incredibly vulnerable. And when we deny that, we also deny the vulnerability and honesty that makes intimacy possible. If I were just able to love myself enough, if I could just do it enough and be it enough on my own and not need you or desire you, that is a really subtle way of trying to have power over someone else so that you can reserve your safe distance and try to not get hurt, which won't get you very far in intimate partnership, much less devotion. We are interdependent beings. We are not independent beings. That's not true. We are also not codependent beings, right? We're not solely outsourcing our okayness and our well-being to others. We are interdependent. We exist in relation and can only be fulfilled in relation. As Johnny Valou says, God is relation. And alchemizing this dance, this, we could say, right relationship into our lives is a massive process. It is a life's work of refinement, which I think is one of the gifts. If you have a long-term committed partnership, you get to start to experience some of the things you can only get from really long-term working with this dance. This refinement is a life's work, whether you do it with multiple partners or just one. And it's a massive process of refinement, which any authentic, devoted relationship will ask of you. And it's not just for the sake of your relationship. It will also contribute to you being a more free and liberated person because, again, how you relate to your partner is how you relate to life. How you relate to desire is how you relate to your life. How you have sex reveals how you are relating to life. And what I said at the beginning, it's a magnifying glass and it's a mirror. And a little tangent here that goes with sort of like loving ourselves enough. And of course, you must also be able to see and witness yourself in order to be seen and witnessed in relationship. If you're not able to see and experience and be in your own beauty, you will not receive that witnessing from others. They could or could not be dishing it out constantly, and you're still constantly craving assurance and reinforcement and confirmation, but it's never enough because you don't see it. You're not living in it. Or if you're dating, you'll attract people who are either not able to see your beauty, or they are, but your constant need to be affirmed and assured will run the people who can see it off because it's never enough. And as we're working on unveiling and uncovering this in ourselves, especially people who listen to this podcast, you guys are really, invested in expressing the fullness of who you are and healing into the fullness of who you are. And sometimes when we're invested in that journey, we can neglect or compartmentalize how we're existing in our intimate partnerships, especially if our practices and the ways that we show up to life are really different from our partners, which often they are. And it's a big mistake to compartmentalize that away from how you are healing into a wider and more free existence because you're missing out on what could be the greatest field of your transformation. I see it all the time. All the time. People who are really all up in the being a conscious person, being an awake person, working on themselves, spiritual development, conscious parenting, and all of that. And their intimate partnership or their marriage is in a little box that's locked up and not allowed to touch any of that other development because it is not yet a story that lives up to what they seem to be unlocking in other areas, but it is the key. The thing that's in the box is the key. What's in the way is the way. This is a side tangent. I see it less common in homosexual relationships with men in particular. I see it the most in heterosexual relationships with men, but I see it often enough that I'm just going to bring it up. And if this doesn't apply to you, you can just fast forward to a couple of minutes. But it's like projecting all of your weird man shit onto your husband. You're punishing your male spouse, partner, boyfriend, husband, as if he is the capital M man. It's like this baseline punishment and anger that your partner is a man. You resent the fact that you want to be with a man, and all of these shit assumptions about what that means. Well, men are abusers, and men are toxic, and men are the patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. Sure, some men are abusers. Some men are toxic. Yeah, the patriarchy has some toxic, abusive men in it. And that's a quite small percentage of men, and you're probably not in a relationship with them. You have to detox all of that archetypal projecting shit out of your relationship. Because if you don't, you are recreating it in your relationship by insisting that that's the case. Also, there are women who are abusers. There are people of every gender and expression who are abusers, who are toxic, and who are definitely, quote, the patriarchy, okay? And so when we bring all of this projection and archetypal collective stuff into our relationship and then aim it at our partner, we are recreating and perpetuating those dynamics. And so you usually, and again, I'm speaking mostly to heterosexual relationships where there's a man, you are constantly punishing him for being a man. And often what you think is going on for him, isn't, right? It starts to create a distortion where you either feel like a victim in your relationship, or you only feel powerful if he looks weak or feels weak. This is a very common dynamic. Unconsciously, nervous system energy, etc. It's like, I only feel powerful if men are being weak or are made to feel bad and guilty and agree to being responsible for everything that I hate about the world and my life. And so most of your energy goes to disciplining them, punishing them, chastising them, and make sure they stay in their place in relation to you according to whatever your paradigm is. And if that's the case, you never get to experience, again, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, the gift of difference, the gifts of men, or the gifts of what your partner has to offer you. You never get to experience the gifts. And it tends to come out and you think that the man is a dog that you have to train and control, and you wonder why it feels like he's always just waiting for you to tell him what to do, and then you whine about him acting like one of your children. You've trained him to do that. And is it any wonder then that we start to see loss of motivation, loss of direction, sexual dysfunction, all sorts of things can come out of this. So when the dynamic above is in play, and again, if this doesn't apply to you in your relationship and your orientation, you can skip it. But when the dynamic above is in play, sometimes it has the appearance of calm and cool waters. The domestic life is really calm and peaceful, but it's probably not spicy. Sometimes this dynamic gets in gear and the man is doing everything that the lady wants. He's being very, good behavior, but the sex life isn't going great, or it may even be impotent because there's a way that she's trained his strength out of him. You've trained his power out of him in your presence, and you actually don't allow him to be himself with his instincts and impulses because you're projecting all the ways that you are so sure that they are bad. You're offended by them, and you are constantly putting that on them. And sometimes the man just opts out of the game altogether because he feels like he can't win, so he just stays at a distance and gets really reserved. And then you're like, oh, why doesn't he want me? It must be because I am not pretty enough, or the perfect person starts creeping in again. You have more power than you think in your relationship. It is not a power over dynamic. You are influencing the dynamic more than you think you are. And if your influence is primarily in trying to control, punish, or otherwise diminish your partner from your seat of bitterness and resentment against the collective primarily, that's working against you. You must learn to create the spaciousness in your presence that allows the other person to be present as they are. You must learn to allow others to be who they are with their truth. You must vigorously purify your vision and your energy to see others for who and how they are, not how you wish they would be, and not all of your projections that you put on them that probably don't have very much to do with them. This is true in all relationships, but I know right now I'm speaking to this specific dynamic here because I see this specific dynamic a lot. I don't only work with women, but it is a very common dynamic. He is not being his full self because her energy doesn't allow him to be in his gifts, because she sees his gifts and his presence as threatening to hers, when in fact they're in service to yours. And now back to a more general audience, a great question to ask yourself about any of these dynamics that you have going on in your dating life or your marriage or your partnership. Take a moment to think about, what's the thing that you're upset about or complaining about? What's the status quo that you're just like, if I could just fix this? And bring it to mind, and then ask yourself, what do I get out of that? This came up with a client really powerfully last week. What do I get out of that? What are the ways that the way it is right now is giving you something? What is it? What are the ways that the way it is right now keeps you from having to confront certain things that you don't want to? What do you get out of trying to control the other person? Maybe it's a sense of security or predictability. What do you get out of their sense of powerlessness or reserve? What do you get out of keeping the peace at all costs? What do you get out of pretending like you're a victim in your relationship? What do you get out of, complaining all the time instead of changing your life or being honest with your spouse? Our next point that we'll get to in a minute. What do you get out of resenting your partner for making choices, but they're doing stuff that they want, but you're not, and you're upset about it? What do you get out of that dynamic? What do you get out of insisting that what's happening is fate and it's happening to you rather than something that you help perpetuate? What do you get out of it? You get something out of it or you wouldn't do it. What do you get out of the fantasy of the perfect person who doesn't call you back? And get really honest about what you get out of it. Again, if we're not being judgy about it, we're just getting honest about it. You can just be free and really lay it bare. And if you're getting honest about it, what do you get out of it? You're able to bring it to consciousness and start to take responsibility for it. Self-sovereignty is self-responsibility. And you cannot be queen or king at all in any relationship if you don't take responsibility for how you are a part of the dynamic. It's never just one person. It takes two to tango in every situation. Which takes me to my next point, which is about honesty. You are not actually keeping secrets from your partner. Consciously or unconsciously, they know. Whatever you think your little secret is, the things that you can't share or don't want to say, they're not secrets. They know. And ironically, often something that's happening is that we want more intimacy, but we also want to keep our secrets. You are constantly speaking your truth, whether you are speaking with words or not. You are constantly speaking your truth with your nervous system, with your friends, with your thoughts, and your partner can hear you. They can. If you act like your partner can hear you through your thoughts, through the talks you have with your friends, through your nervous system, shit gets more honest really quickly. Your partner can read the field. They just might read it differently than you. And so what if you started behaving, working on your energy, what's going on inside and outside of you, which is a way of saying working on your presence? What if you started behaving or being as if your partner can read your thoughts and your energy, because they can? Even though you're acting sweet and accommodating on the outside, perhaps, but if inside you're seething, depressed, resentful, and hiding something or don't want to say something, they can feel that. Yes, they can. The behavior control doesn't fool anyone. And this in and of itself can change a relationship. That doesn't mean being incredibly demanding and entitled because you're, quote, being honest. That's a different conversation for another day. But at this point in my marriage, I do most of my communication with my nervous system, with my energy, with telepathy and prayer. And it's going great. It's going way better than what I was doing before. And honesty starts with self. Again, like I said earlier, we can't take ownership and sovereignty over things that you're not aware of and over things that you're not being honest about. And even if you're not aware of it and you're not being honest about it, it's still in your presence and they can still hear you. Which leads to my final point, and I think what I want to close with, so I don't go on too long. You will not experience a different outcome unless you learn to be differently. If you've been with someone for any length of time, you'll know that it can happen where we get on these Ferris wheels, right? Oh, we're having this argument again. Oh, we're having this fight again. It's not about, and the only thing that gets you off of that Ferris wheel, that hamster wheel, oh, we're having this one again. It's just like a groove that you guys have practiced. Well, if when he does this, then I'll do this, and then we'll resolve it. or if I do this and then they do this, then that'll resolve it. But that's a really transactional thing, and that's not actually how you get off the ride. It's a lateral shift. You have to be differently in order to have a different outcome. And often when I ask, so how are you going to show up differently? A lot of people, especially women, automatically go, well, I already do everything. I'm already the one who's doing all of the self-improvement and all of the introspection, and I do all of the things. Nobody needs you to do anything. You must be different to have a different outcome. Doesn't mean be a different person. It means there must be a change, a real, true, authentic, honest change in your presence if there's going to be a change in the dynamic. Something Richard Rudd says that I really like, says, it only takes one person to change a relationship. And that's true. Thich Nhat Hanh says, the quality of being determines quality of action, which is something that we worked with a lot in our ceremony call in August, our projection dojo, which was a really powerful call. I didn't say, how are you going to do more things? How are you going to create a difference, more coherence, more honesty, more intimacy, more love in your presence? That is what will get you off of the circular conversation, repetition, argument ride. It may be true that you're doing everything. It may not be. But again, what do you get out of that? What leverage does it give you, the story that you're already doing everything? Frequently, our partners are not engaging in self-improvement and introspection and personal development in the same ways that we are, and that is okay. They don't have to. It doesn't require that. Whether we're in a heterosexual relationship or not, self and other is a polarity. And we get to appreciate and relate to difference is a core foundational truth in having a true devoted partnership. What really matters is how your presence changes. Not how are you going to behave differently, but how are you literally going to be different in your being, which is like a centrifugal force that ripples out into the room and speaks way more volumes than anything you could say or do. And it also informs everything you say or do. This is why energetic work, spiritual work, I think, is a core component of devotional partnership. It doesn't mean that both partners have to do the same energy work or have the same spiritual practice or even the same beliefs. Your coherence is not their coherence, but your coherence can change a dynamic and change a relationship. And it will heal your relationship, and it will really change how you relate to life because they are mirrors for one another. Okay, this is not an episode about abusive relationships with shit partners. Most of you are not in that listening to this podcast looking for help. That's why I'm not speaking to it. Most people are just in a rut with how you are being and perceiving. Like, but I'm doing different things. And why is the same thing happening? It's because you're being in the same way. That's why I can help, or other energetic practitioners can help, people who are skillful with alchemy and how soul work and spirit work and energy work, even somatic work works. It's about restoring in your body, in your presence, in your aura, in your meaning-making machine, which is magic. It's restoring how you relate to yourself and other. And then if you're in a heterosexual relationship, also to the opposite sex. It's about restoring how you relate to life and desire and sex. Frequently, the more of a, quote, typical relationship you're in, the more baggage you have to sort through, which is fine. It's important work, and it can transmute a lot of really powerful things, regardless of what kind of relationship you're in. And the last pro tip I will take is stop taking relationship advice from people who just want to bitch about their partners with you. If people are getting on the boat with you and you just chit chat with your friends, you're like, oh my God, yeah, that partner just totally sucks. And if they would just change, everything would be better. If they're just holding up that perfect fantasy, judgy, dishonest, incoherent standard for you and with you, and they're getting in the boat with you and being like, oh yeah, me too. Like, that's not going to help your relationship. Remember, your partner can hear you. They can. It's in your energy, it's in your field, all of your conversations, all of your thoughts, they're all in your aura, they're all in your energy, they are all in your presence, they're in your backpack, you bring them with you wherever you go, your partner can hear you. Stop taking advice from those people. Your relationship, even if your partner doesn't do your spiritual practices or obsess about being the perfect parent like you do, you can still have and grow a meaningful, hot, devoted relationship that fosters both of your lives in a really beautiful and symbiotic way. And this is a core code about reality and how life manifests. And so if you don't get it now, you'll need to get it at some point, and you might as well do it now in the world that you're in. There is no perfect time. There is no perfect person. There is only right now. And now has a wisdom to it. Now knows something. Now is when we know. Now is how we know. Right now is the only true liminal space. Now, without all the shoulds and the fantasies and invisible standards and stories, right now. It's not somewhere else, and it's probably not someone else. It's right here. It's right now. And I think the image I would like to leave you with at the end of this, I was thinking about pearls, and we all know, right? Like the sand, and it gets tossed and turned inside of the shell, and then it turns into a pearl. The relationship is like the shell, and the devotion is the pearl. And the structure of relationship, often our desires to like just run for the hills. It's hard. How can I flee internally or externally? But if there isn't the containment, sand in general doesn't make pearls. It's the containment, the limitation, the shell, the vessel that enables alchemy to take place. And so choosing to step into devoted relationship, devoted partnership is essentially saying yes to this being a vessel for pearl making. Otherwise, it's just sand and general grittiness flowing around. And perhaps becoming a lover is our only actual job. Perhaps becoming a lover in both the micro of our relationships and the macro is our only purpose. Perhaps everything else that we do and be is only in service to being a lover. Something to consider. And so become that lover. You can't go wrong with orienting towards that. Become that lover and let your relationship show you, let it inform you, let it become a part of how you are becoming that lover and how that leads you into something greater and even more expansive, which is being a lover with life and seeing the beloved everywhere. We love all when we love the one. Be well. Peace. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a few moments to subscribe to the show, leave us a review, and share the episode. These small tasks help our independent podcast so much. Be sure to also check out the show notes below to learn more about any resources, guests, or sponsors that we shared with you today. Our intro and outro music was created by artists Aaron Palovic and Jared Kelly. Our podcast logo was created by Elaine Stevenson, and this show is produced by Softer Sound Studio. Thank you for being here. Be well. Peace.